Hello and welcome to the Xbox Expansion Pass. My name is Captain Logan and you're watching a review for the Turtle Beach Stealth Pivot Controller. Thank you again to Turtle Beach for providing this hardware for review. The Turtle Beach Pivot Controller is one of the few times I've been surprised by a controller's design. Necessity is the mother of invention, and the Pivot Controller is setting itself apart by breaking the mold of what we expect out of controllers in 2025. With two sections that rotate within the controller's chassis and a sliding lock to keep them from moving, the Pivot looks to bridge the gap between fighting sticks, retro games, and modern-day games. On its surface, there doesn't appear to be more than the gimmick of going between four possible combinations for buttons and stick loadouts. Many will argue there are really only two, but I wouldn't count out the potential for all four depending on how deep you want to dive into button mapping. My first few hours had me rotating the buttons layouts and raising the retractable joysticks in amusement. The novelty of spring retracting Hall effect control sticks is satisfying in a fidget spinner kind of way. But all the spinning and flipping belies the genius behind having a controller that adapts itself to the game rather than designers going off the common design philosophy. Deep within the LCD screen that displays your profile, battery life, and menu, there is a system that gives you full control of the button mapping. When in fight stick mode, you'll be greeted by a disc-style D-pad and 8 buttons to account for the left and right shoulder buttons, as well as the ABXY and P1 and P2. The standard configuration has the asymmetrical stick layout and your ABXY and D-pad as in the standard Xbox configuration. All of these are reprogrammable from the controller itself or via the Turtle Beach software hub available in the PC or the smartphone app. If you do venture into the software on the PC or smartphone app, you'll be greeted by the additional stick curve settings, dead zone configurations, lighting, and any firmware updates you may need. You have full control of the controller's inputs. You'd need to hone in on your style and preference. Beyond what the pivot control pads offer, you still have the standard shoulder and trigger buttons. Each trigger has a short and long pull setting with a sliding lock allowing you to get faster response time or allowing for the full range of analog triggers. Ideal for swapping between first-person shooters, for those quick trigger pulls, or racing games where feathering the throttle can make the difference on wet tracks. But how does it feel? Well, the fact is that the Turtle Beach Pivot falls close to the weight and feel of the Stealth Ultra 2. It's nice having all this without the heft of an Elite Series 2 has while retaining a built-in lithium battery. The battery so far is a beast, pulling in an easy 15 hours in my testing per charge. Playing wirelessly on a PC is a boon, but without a dock to store it, you may have to keep track of the dongle if you're like me and struggling to have enough USB ports on your PC. Additionally, this will be a USB Type A in a world that is quickly shifting over to the USB Type C. There is a Bluetooth option as well, but personally I try to keep things tied to the dongle. Going back to the feel, in my time testing I put the Pivot to work, diving into fighting games like Injustice 2 and Mortal Kombat 11. The disc-style D-pad did work out as far as accuracy and stability, though over time I could feel my thumb getting sore. I attribute this to a lack of experience I have with fighters overall. However, one of my early concerns was how stable the pivot section would be if you were aggressive with your inputs. I'm glad to say that my button mashing style felt rewarded, and having the stable, swift performance of the D-pad and 8-button layout has promise for those not wanting to break out a full-on arcade fighting gamepad. While I may not be a die-hard fighting fan, I will say the Pivot does a good job offering me a taste of what it feels like to have your own fighting arcade stick. On the other hand, the dual joystick layout offers the expected Xbox default with the asymmetrical stick layout. Beyond that, I spent a lot of time playing Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as well as adventure games like Indiana Jones and The Great Circle. Both felt good and accomplished what you'd expect from any Xbox controller. The boon to this design is that you aren't giving up anything when it comes to the buttons. All are there, with maybe a few things missing. Now for the things I feel aren't sticking the landing, and before I get into it, I do want to say that these are more my personal nitpicks rather than negatives, and will be up to your personal taste. Let's start with the joysticks. The twist design on the joysticks allows for the height of the sticks to drop down, allowing for the low profile clearance necessary to gain access to the other side of the pivot buttons when twisting them. With this in mind, I have had them drop down from vigorous game sessions in Call of Duty Black Ops 6. The twitch motions or quick spins with too much force can cause the sticks to rotate too much, causing the stick to drop down mid-match. As a result, those who need reliability in those intense moments may find this to be a deal breaker for the controller overall. This has really only happened to me a few times, and I think having you pull up and twist on a revision of the controller may help prevent this from happening accidentally. Another drawback at the moment is the back buttons. There are just two, which can be a negative for Xbox gamers who live with the Elite controller and its 4 back paddles. The comparison seems odd when looking at the cousin to the pivot that recently came out, the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra 2, which indeed has those 4 back paddles in parity with the Xbox Elite 2. While this isn't a big deal for me, I do know that for some, this will be something that you want to have. On a side note, if you're curious, there is a review currently available for the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra 2 controller. Feel free to check that out if you'd like to get my thoughts on that in comparison to the Elite Series 2. Speaking of the Xbox Elite Series 2 and Xbox gamers who may be looking at this as an option, I have to bring up my biggest issue with the Stealth pivot. It's wired. Yep. While PC offers you a dongle to play wirelessly, the pivot is still set up rooted deep in the 2001 Xbox mentality of playing connected up to your console. With this in mind, Turtle Beach does include a 9-foot/3 meter cable with the Stealth pivot, but it was a surprise to find out that there was no pairing option like there is with their Stealth Ultra 2. While some may not see this as an issue, I imagine most gamers playing on their TV have become accustomed to using wireless controllers over the years. Because of that, it's hard to recommend this as a staple, and takes one of my favorite aspects of the controller away, its battery life. Overall, I think the Stealth Pivot controller will find its place with gamers, and kudos to the engineering team at Turtle Beach, who have shown me that most console manufacturers are still playing too safe with their first-party options. If you're a fan of fighters and drop into them on a regular basis, while also spending a fair amount of time playing other genres of games, you will not find a more interesting and unique controller out there. Thank you to Turtle Beach for providing this controller for review. And for more, keep an eye on Xbox Expansion Pass for other hardware reviews.